Hey everybody, it's Jake Dieck with Pyxis Lab, and welcome to the first episode of In the Flow podcast. This is my first time ever hosting a podcast, and I had to bring about a really special guest for the first episode. You all know him from Blackmore Enterprises as well as Scaling Up H2O. Everybody, this is my friend, Trace Blackmore. All right. Hey, everybody. First guest on In the Flow podcast. You all will know him from Blackmore Enterprises as well as obviously Scaling Up H2O. And I had to make you my first guest, Trace. Thanks for being here.
Oh, are you kidding? I am so honored to be your very first guest. When you asked me, of course, I was going to say yes. So, yeah, thanks for having me.
No, I really want to thank you for obviously the overwhelming support here and helping me start this and giving me some good tips to get the ball rolling. So nervous about it, but happy to be here and happy to have you for sure.
You're doing a great job. Everybody's really
Thanks.
excited that you guys are starting a podcast.
Awesome. Well, Trace, I did want to start by asking you about your career. Genuinely, something that I've been curious about, is past. I learned you as the host of Scaling Up. Like that was like the first thing that I learned at AWT. But I wanted to know more about Blackmore Enterprises. Tell me about your immediate fascination, or where the fascination with the water treatment world, the infrastructure, just water in general. Where did that come from?
Well, like you, my dad was in this industry
Yeah.
and I grew up with water treatment. I never really thought about water treatment, it was always in front of me. I tell people my earliest water treatment memory was my dad took me to one of his hospitals and he was digesting a phosphate sample. I didn't know that when I was 5 years old. I know it
Yeah.
now. And I reached up and I grabbed the Erlenmeyer flask that was on his hot plate and I burned the crap out of my hand. And then he had to go find a nurse and they bandaged it up. So that was my very first water treatment memory that I can remember. So
Got you.
from there, occasionally my dad would pick me up from school and he would take me on the job with him. I would carry his test kit. Test kits were a lot bigger back then. You had those
Yeah,
big burettes and all those things. So
I can imagine.
luckily they're a lot smaller now.
Yeah.
And then through high school, actually through middle school, he would always bring samples home. And if I was down there with him, he would say, "Hey, count how many drops it takes to turn it from this color to that color." I had no idea what I was doing, but I was counting
Mm.
drops. So, Dad, it was 30 drops. It was 30 drops. Okay, son. And then he would multiply it out. Then in high school, I actually started, being more manual labor for him if he was doing a startup or something like that. But again, never really considered it as a career. And when I went to college, I became a financial advisor, and that was it was a good job. I was good at it. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it.
Yeah.
In fact, it was okay. I remember I made like President's Club every year for sales and all. So for all the metrics that they would measure me, I was doing great, but I just didn't love it. It was okay. And then Dad said, "Well, hey, what do you think about coming to work over in water treatment?" And I was like, "Dad, that's not a real job. That was just something I did on the kitchen table." And he was like, "No, I assure you, it's a real job." And I kind of, okay, well, let me see what that's like. And oh, am I so glad we had that conversation, because
Yeah.
my best day over in financial products is better than, or I'm sorry, is less than my worst day in water treatment. I've had some things blow up in my face in water treatment, but I've always learned and gotten
Yeah.
relationships out of it. I absolutely love being a water treater.
So a burn on a hand from a flask,
That's how it all
and now all of
started.
a sudden we now all of a sudden we love the industry. No, what you're saying is right. I mean, and one thing too is if you have childhood memories where you grow a fascination for this thing as a child, it becomes fun. It becomes something that you love. And then you are correct in saying like the networking, even when things go wrong in this industry, people are there to support you. And I think AWT is a big lend to that. It kind of shows off how much we actually care for each other. Um, but so that leads to the creation of Blackmore Enterprises. How does that next phase happen? Is that working alongside your dad? Is that how did you start that whole thing up?
Yeah, so my dad never owned his own business. He worked for somebody, and that's who I
Got
worked
you.
for a long time. And then they got sold by a company, and I decided to start my own firm. Then my dad retired at that time, and honestly, I'm just too insubordinate to work for anybody else. That's
Yeah.
just the bottom line with that. But I absolutely love being a business owner. It's been a catalyst for so many things. Not only do I love this industry, the craft of water treatment, but I love learning new ways on how to run business. And we're subscribers of the EOS model from the book Traction. Well, if I didn't have a business, I wouldn't have been able to put that into an incubator and see if it works. And because of that, that kind of drove the creation of the Rising Tide Mastermind. Okay, well, how do we get other business owners and other key professionals together so we're all doing best practices? We're all making sure that we're helping each other and not starting from square one. So I'm so beyond the first question that you asked me, but that's how it started.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's that was one thing that I wanted to learn in particular was you becoming a business owner. I'm a part of my degree was is media business and entrepreneurship and starting our own things, and a huge part of Pyxis and what I've been able to do and starting a podcast, like just having the free reign to do this. I think within the industry speaks volumes, and for you to create your own enterprise and create scaling up H2O, that speaks a lot to you and your character. So um, interesting to learn about that. So you're more dedicated to the consultation portion with Blackmore Enterprises, with consulting about technology, with consulting about treatment methodology. I'm interested to learn what your most common problem is, or a problem that sticks out to you the most while you've been in the field, or checking out a lot of these different operations and seeing how you can help.
I will say probably the most common factor is the people that own the equipment that hire us to take care of the water treatment. They don't understand what they have, and they don't understand how water treatment plays a role in that. And it's our job, and this is the foundation of our firm. It's our job that we explain that to the customer, that everybody can get water treatment and check the box that they have it. And you could probably get it for a lot cheaper than you're going to get it from our firm. But is it doing the things that allow you to make the widgets that you're making or whatever you're using that equipment for? And people just don't understand that. And water treatment is this mystic voodoo that people know that they need to have, but they don't know exactly what it does. And more importantly, they don't know how to hold their water treatment vendors accountable to make sure they're really
Mm,
getting what they're supposed to be getting. And we've got some great companies out there, but we also have some companies that probably should maybe go into some other sort of business as well. And that really makes sure that the customer's not getting harmed and not giving us a bad name as well.
that's fair enough. Yeah, education is a big portion of everything, right? Specific. I mean, at Pyxis, we're developing cutting edge technology to the point where some people have problems in using that tech, even if it comes down to using our app. So, being able to educate on the marketplace is always huge. Um, I wanted to ask too, like which marketplace tends to have some of those more issues. You have listed on your website that you touch industrial, commercial places as well as governmental. Um, which one do you see as something that needs to be more efficient?
I would definitely say out of what you just listed, probably the government section, because
I
they've got
for
to.
some reason
You
knew
knew I
it.
was going to
Sorry to
say
cut
that,
you
right?
off. I knew it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, you need water treatment. Okay, I got to check the box that I got water treatment. Okay, how do we go out and find the best water treatment company? Oh, well, we put an RFP there because everybody does it the same and everybody's on the same level playing field. Well, that's not the case.
Yeah.
And then, so it just breaks down from there. I will say, when you take the time and you find the right people, they do have the ability to make better choices in that RFP process. But if you're just throwing bids out at
Yeah.
government RFPs, they're just choosing by the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fair enough statement, and I can see as to how that can easily mix things up. We're in a an industry that is necessary but niche, something that needs to be more fundamentally understood. And I think that what you do with scaling up, and hopefully this as well, just more content can help do that. Um, so you also have a lot of experience with Legionella outbreaks, probably another common thing that you see quite frequently. Um, but within these marketplaces, is there some systems or operations that have adopted and attacked Legionella in a more efficient manner? And do you still see it as prevalent as it was when Legionella became there was like that initial crisis?
Uh, well, we were learning so much more about
Yeah.
Legionella, and that's one of the coolest things about having the Scaling Up H2O podcast is I've had some tremendous guests on that have literally written the book on Legionella, and every time they come on, I always learn something new. But we are learning more about what we can do, and again, that's education as well.
Yeah.
Water treatment probably knows as much as they need to know, but now we have to transfer that to the people that own the buildings, that own the equipment, because they're the ones that have to make the decisions. And in talking with people, I find that there's maybe some hesitation on what's the best way to have those conversations with their customers. We try to do Legionella Awareness Month every
Mm.
August. And I thought that was going to be a segment we ran just for 1 year. I think we're in our fifth or sixth year of doing it. And there are most listened to and most traded or shared episodes that we have. And I always have a question that I'll answer from the audience on how do we have this conversation? So that's the thing I think we need to focus on. What do the owners of this equipment or the buildings need to know? And then what are they expected to do with that? Because in lieu of that conversation, we have fear. People are scared. Oh, if I test and I find something, then I'm scared of what that means. Well, it's probably worse not to know and not do something. But unless we have that conversation, we can't put that fear at ease, and people will get paralyzed in that fear. So we got to let them know what their responsibilities are, what they should be doing based on what others are doing. And now they've got some educated options that they can make. And a lot of people will say, well, until my municipality makes this a law, I'm just not going to do anything. And then as a water treater, you've got to protect yourself. Okay, we've had this conversation. You own the stuff. You are 100% within your rights to do that. But I need to go on record that this is your decision and it's not because I didn't bring what I needed to at the table. So
Yeah.
for all the water treaters listening to this, make sure you document that conversation. It's not that you're saying, oh, I want to say that you're doing something wrong. It's their decision, so it's a right decision, but you need to make sure that you've documented that you did all the right things for you.
It does it feel like over the course of time that they've gotten better on that level, like down to the base level on Legionella control and education, or does it still feel like there can be more done?
There can be some more done, but absolutely, people have taken the blinders off. It used to
Yeah.
be everybody just, oh, don't say the L word. We don't even want to hear that. Now people are having conversations about it. They're doing more than they have to because not everybody has it into legislation. And then their counterparts in other facilities that they're talking to are asking them, well, do you have a water management plan? Well, no. Do you? Well, of course I do. And these are the reasons why. So I think they're even getting some peer pressure now.
Got you. And then I was also fascinated, like upon my initial investigation, again, green to the marketplaces, green to the industry, picking all of this up as I go here. I was even fascinated to learn about the actual name behind Legionella, where it comes from. I can't remember what the legion was actually called, but it was a group of veterans or something along those
Yeah,
lines
the
in
American
Philadelphia,
Legion.
right?
Yeah.
The American Legion, right? So I was pretty fascinated by that. I'm still digging into.
1976, the Belford Stratford Hotel. There
There
was
we
an
go.
outbreak, and all these octogenarians, septuagenarians, they started dying,
Yeah.
and they thought the Russians were killing our veterans. I think
Yeah.
they called it like the Red Fever or something on Time magazine.
Oh my
They had
goodness.
no idea what was going on, and then they found that it was this bacteria that they
Yeah.
discovered in a cooling tower. Now, Legionella will always be blamed in a cooling tower. So for us water treaters, we got to make sure that we're proving the innocence of the cooling tower. In the outbreak that happened here in Atlanta a couple years ago, it was a fountain where they found it. But where was the first place
Yeah.
they looked? It was at that cooling tower.
Mm.
So yeah, so all sorts of history with that. They named it after
No.
the Legionnaires.
And then obviously has led to a more efficient and more honed in look as to oxidizer dosing, biocide dosing, disinfectant dosing. And so definitely has led to different avenues with us too. So we're able to produce some cool tech that helps with monitoring for that
And there's
stuff.
certifications now. ASSE 12080 is around that. So there's so much good stuff out there. So better information is available. And I think it's great.
Very cool. Obviously, leading into that, you are a CWT. What does it take to be certified in water technology? And how has it changed your perception of the water industry and your day to day?
Oh, I am such a big fan of the Certified Water Technologist designation. It's a big push that we do on our podcast. I firmly believe that there are so many people out there that are in this industry that could pass that exam, but they don't know where to get started or they just lack
Yeah.
the confidence for that. So if anybody's listening to this and they're thinking maybe I should take the exam, go take it. What do you have to lose? That being
I'm
said,
listening and I'm wondering as to whether or not I should be a CWT. But it is there is almost like this over because it has a stout recognition to it. So there is almost this feeling of like it's got to be a challenging exam.
absolutely, and it is.
Yeah.
It's an exam that a lot of people say you can't study for. It really tests your knowledge in the last 5 years. Because so in order to be a CWT, you have to be in this industry for 5 years. And there's some caveats if you perform certain tasks or meet some guidelines that can shave some time off. But it's a 200 question exam on all things water treatment.
Mm.
And yeah, you got to know your stuff to be a CWT.
Absolutely. It's something that maybe I could aspire to. I think even at least some individuals within our company at Pyxis, there has to be. I know my dad is super well versed, so um,
I would encourage them to take the exam. Again, I
yeah.
mean, you got to pay for it, but after that, I mean, at least you
Still,
know.
yeah, it's a great certification for sure.
Yeah, highly,
Um,
highly recommend that anybody listening to this, if you're interfacing with customers, other water treaters, it does set you apart because it is a rigorous exam, but it shows that you are willing to do more than you have to than the average water treater.
Fair enough. And I mean, also another avenue to show that you do more than the average is to be a part of AWT. We're
Love
both a part of
AWT.
AWT. I know that I constantly look forward. I'm constantly looking for you around. And obviously now I'm going to be, we have a more of a personal connection. I'll be shooting you a text or giving you a call, seeing if you're out and about at AWT, but you have to be attending, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
remember the last convention that I missed. We talked about my dad earlier. My dad really wasn't
Yeah.
involved with AWT. We knew about it. We went to, I think there was a conference in '96 or something like that up in DC that we drove to. Other than that, I don't think we were really involved with AWT. And then when I started my firm in 2004,
Yeah.
one of my mentors, James Malloy, he said, "Hey, you need to join AWT. I don't care if you don't have money for it. You sell another account. You find a way to become a member of AWT because you're going to get resources that you're not going to get anywhere else, and you're going to find people that are going to help you with problems you can't even conceive of having right now." And it's just going to be the catalyst for your company, for your career. And I didn't know any better but to listen to him. So I wrote the check out, I wrote the application, and 10 years later, I became president of that organization. So glad I listened to him, and I could not say enough good things about AWT.
It is the best, and so my first time ever experiencing it was 2018 when it was in Grand Rapids, I
Hmm.
believe, or no, maybe it was no Palm Springs is where it was. Sorry, but so Matt, I was in college at the time. I'm still studying media. I trying to understand the water industry. I'm helping Pyxis on the side. Matt pulls me out during the summer and is like, "Do you think that you can set up one of these exhibitions and do a booth?" And I'm like, "I can try." So during 2018, I was able to go to Palm Springs. I got to meet a whole bunch of different people, and now my network is so filled with AWT. It truly is a family. And I think that Pam Simmons can attest to that. I've talked to her multiple
Pam's
times.
great.
Pam's the best, but I mean, so many connections within that industry. And so knew Ian Militello before Ian joined us. So um, building a broad base and all these sub committees and committees that they have is still, it's super awesome to be in that network.
A quick
Um,
Pam story. So Pam Simmons,
yeah.
she came to my office to, sell me her wares. And when she left, I had her leading the marketing committee for AWT.
Yeah. She we just had a meeting yesterday. So the marketing committee is strong at work, but she's easily been one of my favorite connections that I've made so far. And obviously AWT is what brought us together there. So um, that being said as well, another prominent figure of AWT, at least to me, is scaling up H2O. I wear my pin on
Love it.
all of my lanyards. And I think we've even had a couple tabletopper banners at our
Yeah.
booth personally at AWT. So this is what I knew you for coming into the industry. You had already established scaling up H2O, and it had really been like a huge following. Matt was immediately like, "You got to listen. You got to. This will help you understand a little bit more about the industry." When did the podcast idea start? When did you officially implement the podcast, and when did you actually feel that there was momentum being gained?
I love this question. So it was maybe 2014 or 15. A friend of mine said, Trace, I really think you have a knack for breaking complex things down in a simple way. And I like to listen to your voice. You should really consider doing a podcast. And I said, well, that's awesome. What's a podcast? I had no idea.
Yeah.
So he shared with me my very first podcast app. It was Stitcher at the time. I don't even Is Stitcher still around? I don't even know.
I don't. I most likely not. I'm all like Spotify, probably still a thing, but who knows?
So
I'll look it
anyway,
up.
so he downloaded Stitcher and he said, "Here are some of my favorite podcasts." And at the time, it was John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneurs on Fire.
Got you.
That was the first podcast I'd ever listened to, and he did a podcast a day. He's a monster. Anyway, I started listening to that, and then I started listening to other podcasts, and I just couldn't believe that was free content. There was so much good information out there. And then kind of had an imposter syndrome. Well, I can never do anything like that. And then 2 years passed. I was a huge podcast fan. And I just decided it was April and of 2017. I decided if I want to do this thing, just do it. If I did it 2 years ago, I would have been 2 years into this
Mm.
and I would be a lot better off. So I took actually it was right here. This is my phone headset from my office. Most horrible quality. I'm actually showing it to him right now. So
Yeah,
and
we're
it's got a
talking
lifter on it. It actually
Bluetooth.
lifts up the headset or the
Yeah.
handset on my phone. That is what I recorded my very first episode on. And I said this when I accepted the Innovation Award last year for AWT, that if you ever have any doubts that you want to try something new and eventually you will get better at it if you stick to it, listen to episode 1. It was the most horrible bit of broadcasting anybody has ever done. But from then, so that was April of 2017. As we're talking on this podcast, we have about 420 episodes and so many amazing guests that have been on. And if you listen throughout the years, and thank you for so many people that stuck with me through episode 1, I had no clue what I was doing. I had no interview chops at all. I didn't know how to properly formulate a question or encourage the guests to feel comfortable on the podcast. So I
These
learned.
are all the feelings that I'm going through right now. By the
Well, you're doing great. Okay, so
I'm trying,
so nobody
trying
knows
here.
that, but you're doing great. So all of those things, we now have the Scaling Up H2O podcast. We have like 20,000 subscribers. We're mostly in the United States, but we are in 92 countries.
Mm.
I'll go to things like the AWT, and people are like, "Will you do a selfie with me? Can you sign this?" And I got to tell you, I love that, but I just, it's me, right? You really want my signature? What is that for?
You've
So,
become a personality.
but I just love that people are taking that podcast and they're actually doing what I originally intended, which was raising the bar in the industrial water treatment industry.
Mm.
I started teaching with the Association of Water Technologies. I'm embarrassed to say this, about 20 years ago. And I love that. Twice a year, I got to teach people best practices and math and all this stuff on how to do their job better. But then when that was done, I didn't have an opportunity to do that outside of my own company. So the podcast gave me a way to do that each and every week. And my favorite thing to hear is when somebody comes up to me at AWT or another conference and they say, "I'm doing that." Or, "I was thinking about getting out of this industry, but you told me I was doing it wrong. You said I was just wash, rinse, and repeating every single day, and I wasn't stretching myself, and I wasn't looking for new things. But because I did, I love this job, and I just got my friend a job with this company because I love it so much." Or so many stories like that. I had no idea that that was going to come from that recommendation. Trace, you should do a podcast.
Well, and I would even say that it's something that we monitor and look at too at Pyxis. What are we hearing in the marketplace? And a big reason that we have a pulse on that is because of scaling up H2O. So um, I can attest as well personally. It helps me understand the industry. Again, I'm green to this. At 26, it's tough, especially when you didn't concentrate or learn in it. Obviously, like you said, you had gone off. You had that pre-established knowledge of it because of your dad, similar to myself, but then went and studied something else during school. So when you come back to it, or at least get into it at the first point, it can be overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but having information like what you provide on scaling up H2O has been extremely helpful. So more the merrier, I say. Any specific lesson or big takeaway that you've had speaking to a lot of these professionals, a lot of these high individuals in the marketplace? Anything in particular that stands out?
I learn something every single interview. It's the
Yeah.
coolest thing about being a podcast host. You're going to love it, I promise. But the thing that stands out so much, and I should have an episode number for you, but I didn't look it up. I apologize. I've had
You good?
Kathleen Edelman on the program 3 times, and she talks about temperaments, which is how we communicate with each other. And she broke down what the temperaments were on the first episode. On the second episode, which is the one I'm referring to, and she'd been coaching me for months, years probably before I had her on that second episode. She shared something with me that I heard like 15 times. I heard her say it, but I didn't really realize it. And until she said that, I was taking her advice wrong, and I can still remember that. And I remember it was before video. We were just doing an audio version. We weren't able to see each other during the interview, and I got goosebumps. But
Mm.
she told me, and if nobody's familiar with the temperaments, I apologize. For your show notes, I'll get you these episodes
Sure,
that you can
sure.
have on there. But it truly is one of the best things you can do for every relationship that you have in your life. And it teaches you the words you need to hear and also the words that you say. And that's different for other people. And I was so scared that if I didn't, and I'm a red, by the way, there are 4 colors, there's yellow, red, blue, and green. So I always speak in my red tone, and if I'm assuming you're a yellow, we don't know that, but let's say you were a yellow. If I were to try to speak yellow words and I got it wrong, I was so scared that I was going to mess that up. So by default, I would just speak in my red tone, and she gave me permission that even if I was trying to speak in the yellow and I got it wrong, I was still so much better off because I was out of my red tone. I wasn't thinking about me, I was thinking about you and trying to give you the gift of using better words. And I'm getting goosebumps now just thinking about hearing that. because I didn't get that until she said it, which was probably the 16th time she said it, but it happened to be on the podcast. So that's the memory that comes up when you ask that question.
So I'm looking at kind of a breakdown here. So red is choleric. Is that right?
And choleric, yeah.
Choleric, so a dominant or extroverted tone. Yellow being I don't
Sanguine,
want to mispronounce. Sanguine,
yes.
influence, inspiring, and extroverted as well.
We can turn
And
this
then
entire podcast into temperaments if you like. Yeah,
what?
and I'm guessing you're a sanguine, but I'll send you a test
Okay,
afterwards. Then we have the
I would
blue.
think
The
that.
blue is the
Yep.
melancholic.
Yep.
The blues are very information driven,
Yeah.
but more specifically, they're introverted processors,
Mm.
and they're task oriented.
Yeah. So
So
it says here, conscientious or cautious and introverted, and then phlegmatic would be the green,
mhm,
steadiness, supportive, introverted as well.
those are the
Um,
four,
got it.
and there's a language for each one of those, and you might
Yeah.
not realize it, but you are listening for how I'm communicating with you, and you're looking for me to use certain words to feel
Yeah.
that I'm connecting with you. And when you don't get those, sometimes the conversation doesn't go the way that we want. So
Yeah.
if you learn that, you're now able to use better words. And as Kathleen says, you're now giving your words to the other person as a gift.
Mm.
And it's amazing what that does. You don't have any kids yet. When
Not
you
yet.
have kids, this is a game changer. I've got an
I don't doubt it.
18-year-old yellow son, and if I talk to him in my red temperament, I will lose him every time.
Mm.
When I use his yellow words, we can actually talk about stuff.
Yeah, and I take that like in the business context, at least from our end, is like when you look at support for the customer, education to the marketplace, intercommunication, like our team here, our family here at Pyxis, being able to navigate the way to communicate to each individual based on that is it's got to be powerful. Perception is reality, communication and content is king,
There you
and
go.
uh, and so I do have to agree. That's a phenomenal point. And I'm going to look a little bit more into these temperaments and into the way that I can change my language to adjust for other
I'll make sure
people.
you have
So
all that information for your show notes.
thank you. I appreciate that. And then I just wanted to kind of wrap up with I mean, we've talked a ton about the podcasting and whatnot, but any last tips for a new host like myself to any good practices here? Have I
Well,
done
here's the
anything
thing.
with,
You've already done the hardest part, which was to start.
yeah, just
There are
do it.
so many people out there that said, I want to do a podcast, and they never started. So
Yeah.
you've already are ahead of all of those. The other
Thank you.
thing I would say is be consistent.
Yeah.
So you now have a product that you are giving to the water treatment community. So allow them to count on you. If you say, hey, we're going to put out an episode every X, whatever that is,
Yeah.
then make sure that you've got a plan that you're going to put that out there, and they can count that, hey, when the next X comes up, we know that we're going to have a new episode there. And my foundational advice is always have fun. If this
Yeah.
isn't fun, don't do it. If you're having fun with it, run with it.
I was nervous this morning, and now we're through this. Was just on scaling up myself, which was obviously dream come true moment. So
Yeah,
very
you
cool.
rocked that interview.
Thank you. I tried. I'm gonna listen back to it and be like, this is absolutely horrible.
Okay, okay, so that's another piece of advice. The
No,
hardest
yeah,
thing that you will have to do is listen to yourself.
yeah.
I could not stand that. Now at episode 420 something or whatever one, you'll get over that. I promise
It
you'll get
rolls
over
off the
that.
back.
You just have to
Has to be
muscle
like
through
our
it.
videos, like on LinkedIn. Matt and I hated the videos at first. Now we have so much fun with it that we watch them back together and laugh. And so I'm hoping the same here. And the conversation with you has been. We've already had great discourse in the past, so like it feels natural here. So I appreciate that. And then one last thing I wanted to ask you before we wrap up is what's one thing outside of water, outside of this industry, outside of Blackmore Enterprises, what is something that you're passionate about, something that you like to do as a hobby, something that you love?
Well, it still has to deal with water is the issue with that.
No,
So if I can take that part out of the guidelines of your question. So I'm a
that's
scuba dive
fine.
instructor.
Oh, okay.
And I've been scuba diving since 2003. And
Okay.
I started scuba diving on a dare, which I don't recommend. We were down at the beach with some friends of ours, and the guy said, "Hey, I'm a scuba diver. You want to go diving with me?" And no, I didn't. I was scared of it. There's no air down there, so I said no. And he said, "Well, are you chicken?" Okay, you can't call me chicken and not get me to do something. I probably shouldn't have said that on the air, but
No,
so
that's
I
it's a
had to.
Marty
So
McFly moment.
right, it was so Back to the Future.
Yeah.
So yeah, he called me chicken. I had to act on it, and I did not have a good experience. The instructor that I had there, it was like a get you in the water as quickly as possible type moment. He
Oh,
didn't teach me about my ears. So if you scuba dive, you have pressure that's on you. You have
yeah.
to learn how to clear your ears. And I actually had some issues with my ears after that first scuba diving, but it was still pretty cool. So I decided once everything was cleared from the doctor, I was going to take scuba diving classes. And I did. I really enjoyed it. I became an assistant instructor pretty early on after that. And then I would just help the instructor at the dive shop do whatever he needed to do. Fast forward to today. Last year, I celebrated checking out my 1,000th scuba diver. So I've taught over 1,000 people how to breathe underwater. And if are you a scuba diver?
I'm not. No, I've
All right, I
actually
can
never
fix
even
that.
done
I
it.
know a guy. It is the coolest thing ever. I feel like I'm Superman,
Okay.
like I'm literally flying. And
Yeah.
now you're in this world that really we shouldn't be
I,
in, and you can see
yeah.
such amazing things. I love scuba diving.
I was gonna say you're like almost in it's an alternate reality. It's a
It really
different
is.
it's an entire different universe that we don't operate in. So well, we do, but we don't. Yeah. So I completely get that. That is awesome. I also did not know that either. So more you know.
There we go.
Thank you for sharing, my friend. And I really appreciate you being my first guest. I said to you immediately when I brought the idea of starting this up to you that if I'm doing this, Trace is number one, has to be number one. So, an honor, my friend, for you to be on.
The honor was mine. Absolute pleasure being here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Trace.